So we're just going to jump straight into this because I decided that it would be a great idea to do a project in a day and to film it, and it's currently 1 in the afternoon and I haven't actually started sewing it. So basically this is the plan of what I want to make, roughly inspired by the shirts in The Great, the TV show. It's pretty similar to shirts that I've made before, so I went ahead and pulled out my notes for those and sort of worked from there. Essentially it's all going to be squares, so the body is going to be a square for the front, a square for the back, same for the sleeves, same for the gussets. There's going to be gathering along the neckline and the top of the sleeve and the cuffs. And essentially, if that's the fabric, so this is the selvage edge, right? Grain line. Basically, that's not a square. I'm gonna have the body. Sleeves are gonna be a little bit shorter. Oh dear, squares. These are not squares. You know, you get the idea, right? So squares for the sleeves, squares for the body. I think I'm actually gonna cut these two in one. So you can sort of imagine the neckline's gonna go here with a slit. This bit's gonna be like a different color actually. So there's going to be gathering there and along the back, and the heads of the sleeves are going to be gathered, and so's the cuffs. Let's hope that roughly makes sense. All the other pieces we're going to cut from the leftover bits, basically. Here we go. So I've cut out the body and the sleeves. I did choose measurements in the end, which I didn't mention before. I did the body 70 by 70 centimeters and the sleeve 60 by 60. I'm already thinking maybe I should have made the body a little bit wider because of the gathers, but hey ho, it's done now. So I'm left with this piece along the, I'm left with some length over here as well, which I'm not using yet. But I'm left with this like rectangle from the bottom, right? Which is here. And really unscientific. The width of this is going to be the width of the gussets under the arms. So essentially, you could measure it. I don't think I'm even going to do that. I'm just going to fold it and cut and have two of those. And that's this one, right? That's a square. This is just because you can only see the front the way I drew it. And then probably this will be enough to do some sort of a collar from as well, because I'm probably just gonna do straight collar and straight cuffs as well. So that's all coming from this strip here. So before I get super into the construction and just get carried away and never mention any of this, I thought I should talk for a second about how I'm going to put everything together and my plan, if you like, for everything. Basically the fabric's pretty sheer. You're going to be able to see the seam allowances through it. Also I'm going to have to wear something underneath, but I knew that when I started. So basically I'm just going to overlook all the seams. I did a little test to see how narrow I could get them. On my machine it happens to fall on the edge of the foot, which works out great. Nice and easy. I'm not going to use any of the selvages as like seam finishings because it actually frayed when I pre-washed it. This is the selvage edge, so I don't really trust that, so we're just going to overlock everything. And yeah, it's not a historical project. If this shirt was to wear to like a reenactment event, I would probably hand finish the seams. Because it's just going in my wardrobe, I'm not gonna bother. I want to finish it today, and that's not gonna happen if I start going crazy. And it's already like 2, so I kind of just need to get a move on. So I'm just gonna overlock all the edges. I might not overlock the cuff edges on the hand and the hem, just because the cuff is gonna get encased basically in the cuff. Does that make any sense? And the hem's just gonna get folded over, so it's just gonna add bulk there. But everywhere else I will overlock, and then that means I can just sew the seams, and basically once the seams are sewn and it's pressed, it's done, which is great because it's fast. So I'm going to start on the neckline. I haven't quite decided whether I want a collar that's like the ones in the show, so quite big and squared, or whether I just want a small like standing collar. But basically I'm going to figure that out later. And I'm just going to start on the actual like neck opening, because I do know how I'm going to do that. The edge is going to be ungathered, and then the neck opening is going to be gathered. So I'm working from the outside in and figuring out how much I want ungathered, and then by default whatever is left just gets gathered into the neck. So I've just roughly gathered it. You can sort of start to get an idea for how it's gonna look, even though it looks a little rough still right now, but that's fine. Basically it's gathered up tighter at the front than the back, and that's what does that V shape in the front with the gathers on the side. I am gonna add a little gussets on the shoulders, so like cut in, add a little piece of fabric, just because, you know, your neck comes in and you want more space around it. I'm gonna cut further down. Don't know if I mentioned that already. Cut a little further down here so it doesn't stick up like this. And then I'll do proper gathering stitches around. I'll do 2 rows and start thinking about putting a collar on. When it's flat on the table, you can kind of see a little bit better what I mean about the front being gathered up tighter than the back. So it's day 2 now. I'm sure no one is surprised, right? I was being very laid back about the deadline. I don't mind though, I'm only 7 hours into the project, so I'm tentatively aiming to get it done in under 12 hours. If I don't, that's fine too. In any case, this is how far I got yesterday. Essentially, the neckline's mostly done except for the collar, so I'll need to do a collar. That's part of the reason I stopped yesterday as well. I still hadn't decided what collar I wanted. I have decided now. I'm gonna go for the sort of big squarish ones that the ones in the show have. So that'll be my next thing. But the neckline's done. All the pieces are cut out, all the pieces are overlocked. Most of what's left is gonna be just sewing up all the seams, which should go pretty quickly. I have made a list for today, and essentially it's sewing up the seams, the collar, the cuffs, and I mean things like hemming it, which is not going to be overly long. So far I'm pretty pleased with it. You can sort of start to see how it's going to come together. I think it'll be more clear once the sleeves are on. The sides always sort of stick up a bit funny before the sleeves are attached, but that's just how it is. So we're gonna get straight back into it. I say straight back into it, it's already noon again, clearly I haven't learned anything, but that's all right. On to the collar. So this is very rough, but hopefully it gets the idea across. Essentially I want the edges, the corners, to sit at this sort of angle, and I know that the back is straight. I'll try to put a screenshot. You can see the dots in the fabric on one of her shirts. It's this edge that I'm not entirely sure about. I think I might need to scoop out the edge that attaches to the shirt, so take a bit out. But I'm not entirely sure yet. But because I know that this edge is straight, I'm just going to start with a rectangle and go from there. And I'm just going to do it to the size of the neckline that I want. You can see you can see all my mess in the background as well, but you can see the gussets in there if it will focus. Yeah. So essentially you can kind of see that that's making the neckline a little bit more 3D than it was before. So I'm just about ready to cut out the collar, and I thought I'd just take a second to explain what I'm doing, because I'll be honest, I'm being a little bit fussy about it. I think it's because the collar is sort of the most recognizable bit. I figured out the size that I wanted, and I could actually fit it out of that strip I had left over at the end, despite cutting gussets and, you know, everything else out of that. However, the dots on my fabric are not in a grid, the rows are staggered, so if I do this, the dots won't line up the same way as on the collar, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut the collar out here instead, which it's not really necessary, I'll be honest. You would be totally fine cutting it out from the bottom. I'm also only going to cut one out of the Swiss dot, and the other one I'm going to cut out of lawn. I have a scrap that I found, which is going to work for that. That's basically just because the fabric's pretty sheer, so you can see the dots of the layer underneath. Obviously this is on black. I've put it on a black background to show that you can see the dots underneath. And I know that the shirt is like white on white on white, and it's not going to be as obvious, but I just think it's going to give a little bit of a cleaner look, and I have the lawn anyway, so I'm just going to go for it. And that just means that it's just going to look a little neater. Once the collar is stitched on 3 sides and turned through, it essentially turns into a little pocket, which you can pin to the collar of the shirt. So because this flips over, this collar, I'm pinning right side of the collar to the wrong side of the shirt, the inside of the shirt. So once you're on the outside, it's going to flip over like this and have the dots facing up on both. This side is going to get hand sewn down. There we go, so the collar is stitched on, just that bit that I was showing before. The underside isn't, but now that I've tried it on the mannequin and I know that I like the way it looks, that means I can press this, stitch the underside, and then the collar will be totally done. So the collar is finally in. I realise now you probably can't really see it from this angle, but that's fine. I'm just over 9 hours into the project, so I think it's still going fine, but that might be... maybe I'm being too optimistic, I don't know. But basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the sleeves. So I'm going to sew the gussets into the sleeves, that's the square underarm bits. Then I'll sew the seam and the cuff, and then I'll gather the head of the sleeve and sew it onto the body. The order of everything is... it doesn't have to be in that order, that's just how I'm doing it. I'm fairly confident that once I start actually putting all the pieces together, things are going to move pretty quickly, because I'm finishing things off before putting them on, if that makes sense. Plus everything's overlocked, so I don't need to finish any seams on the inside or anything. The cuffs are on. I did machine stitch in the end because I'm already at 11 hours nearly. So I've got, I mean, it doesn't matter if I don't hit the target, but if I want to hit the target, then I've got about an hour left. I will be adding a button to this with just a little thread loop, but I don't really feel like it right now, to be honest, so I'm going to leave that for last, and I'm going to move on to assembling. So I've marked where I want the gathering to be at the sleeve head. Essentially, I'm just going to gather this down, match the top, and then sew down on either side. And it's all in one piece now. I'm just at 12 hours now. It's not technically finished, though I suppose it is wearable. There's still no buttons on the cuffs, and there's no hem yet, but other than that, that's all done. So I figured I should just film a quick little wrap up to let you know that the final time for the project was 12 hours and 45 minutes, which definitely could have been done in a day, even though I didn't do it in a day because I didn't get up early and I didn't work late. But it's fine, I'm still counting it as a win. I'm happy with the end result. I think it turned out nice. All in all, I think if I was gonna do this again, I mean, I say that I would get up earlier and do it all in an actual day, but I don't know that I would, to be honest, so we're not gonna lie about that. But anyway, thanks for following along on this journey, and hopefully it was a bit interesting, or you learned something, or maybe you want to try making one. Bye!